You may soon be getting a pay raise in the form of a tax cut. One thing that is keeping me cautiously optimistic about the economy over the next couple of years is that we do not know what kind of tax cuts are going to be implemented, and they could be great. And recently, President Trump has been talking about some of the things that he's trying to get passed.
In the coming weeks and months, we will pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and that will include no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. It's called the One Big Beautiful Bill, and it will be the biggest bill ever passed in our country's history. It will include the biggest tax cuts, regulation cuts, military supremacy, and just about everything else. We will cut more than $1 trillion in wasteful and unnecessary spending.
Now, obviously, we've seen a ton of things promised that have been completely ignored or walked back at this point, but let's go through some of the tax proposals that will make your life much better off. Now, just in case you don't understand why tax cuts would be beneficial for you, I want you to go look at your pay stub and see that if you currently make 100 grand, you actually walk away with probably 60, 65 grand. Would your life be better off if you walked away with 75 or 85, or maybe even, crazy idea, you kept all of it? I know, what a wild concept that you actually would maybe get to keep what belongs to you. Would you be able to save more? Would you be able to invest more? Would you be able to buy healthier food? Would you be able to do better things for your family? Maybe send them to a better school? Maybe go to the gym and get healthier? Now multiply that by literally every person in the entire country, and you can see how quickly tax cuts could spiral into prosperity. Now, there is a problem with this that I'll touch on at the end, but let's first go through all the proposed tax cuts. First, let's look at family and child-related tax proposals. Number one, we have a $5,000 baby bonus, which is a one-time $5,000 payment to new mothers. Now, this would be an attempt to combat the declining population. Fun fact, the United States birth rate has been below replacement level since the 1970s. The only reason we've had a growing population that entire time is because of immigration. Without immigration, we would have had a declining population decades ago and been in the same situation that places like China are in today. Not good. A demographics collapse is pretty much impossible to grow your way out of. And so a baby bonus of $5,000 to new mothers is one tax cut aimed at incentivizing having kids to try and start a new baby boom. But that's not all. We have expanded child tax credit and child care tax credit proposals. Tax credits are extremely powerful because if you make, let's say, $100,000 and you're gonna owe, let's say, $30,000 in taxes, a tax credit will offset what you owe dollar for dollar. A tax deduction, on the other hand, is a lot less powerful because let's say if you make $100,000 of taxable income, a deduction just says, okay, we're only gonna say you made $90,000 in taxable income. In other words, a deduction shrinks the amount that you're gonna owe taxes on, whereas a credit shrinks the amount of dollars of taxes you actually owe. Next, let's take a look at business and investment tax cut proposals. These ones are especially powerful because business quite literally drives the growth of this country. All employees get their income from businesses. And in fact, all income comes from doing business. And so any amount the government takes its boot off the neck of American businesses contributes to rapid and almost instantaneous growth. First, and probably most important, we have a proposal to restore 100% bonus depreciation and make it retroactive for the entire year of 2025. The way that businesses pay taxes is different than the way individuals pay taxes. You're an individual and you make 100 grand, you're gonna pay your taxes and then you get to spend or do whatever you want with whatever's left over. If you're a business, you have all of your income, you spend some of that income on your business expenses, and then whatever's left over, you're gonna pay taxes on that. But there is a catch, because if you're a business and you spend money on things that are usually pretty expensive, the IRS says, okay, well, wait, you don't actually get to deduct all of that in the year that you spend that money. Instead, we're gonna let you deduct that over a very long time period. This is for things like equipment, real estate, vehicles, planes, and some other large expenses. But bonus depreciation applies to certain categories of those large expenses and says, wait, we're gonna flip this back the other way and let you actually expense it all in year one. This allows businesses to actually spend money on the things that they want to spend money on that will help their business grow, because they don't have to worry about paying taxes on income that they no longer have because they spent it on something. Next, we have a proposal to take the corporate tax rate down to only 15%. Now, recently, the rhetoric around this has been that will only apply to businesses and products that are exclusively made in the United States. But something like a 15% tax rate, corporate tax rate, would make the United States a tax haven around the world. It could bring a ton of business to the US. A lot of people would complain, oh, that's just more money left in corporate hands, in the hands of the elite. But if that extra money is not spent on growth, then all that does is increase profits, which increases the value of your 401k. Over half of American households are invested in the stock market. And if it does get reinvested into growth, then that's more money in the hands of employees in their paychecks. So good news either way. Okay, now the big one. Let's take a look at some individual tax cut proposals. Number one, we have no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. This is something that Trump campaigned on and gained huge popularity. This one is, I think, fantastic because largely the people who make a lot of tips and work a lot of overtime are lower income. This goes directly to the least well-off people in the United States. It is not a tax cut for people who don't need it as much. Higher income is almost always exempt, and so there is no overtime being paid anyway, even if they are working more hours. No tax on tips and overtime also incentivizes both employees and employers to allow more of this work because it just doesn't cost as much. And there is a bigger benefit to being able to do so, which means it also incentivizes more work, which is more productivity. Next is a proposal to end taxes on Social Security payouts. Now, this one I'm mixed on because on one hand, I'm always a fan of tax cuts. On the other hand, Social Security is by definition a direct wealth transfer from young poor people to old rich people. The number one highest correlation of wealth is age, because the older you are, the more time you have had to build wealth and make more money. And Social Security is not means tested, but everybody paying those Social Security benefits are the people who are younger, therefore poorer, and they're still working. So it's a wealth transfer from young, poor, productive people to old, rich, unproductive people by definition. You might say that's a good thing, but that's still actually what's happening. So to cut taxes on Social Security payouts will absolutely be beneficial to the people receiving Social Security payouts, just not where those cuts are needed most right now. We also see a proposal to make auto loan interest tax deductible, which again, I'm all for cutting taxes. This is just a drop in the bucket. It's not going to make a meaningful difference to people. Yes, I know the average car loan today is like $700 per month, but the amount of interest on that is not that much, especially over a year. And to just have that apply as a deduction against your taxable income, it's not going to make a meaningful impact in the amount of taxes that the average household pays. It is, on the other hand, probably going to incentivize a few more dumb people to make a few more dumb decisions about how big of an auto loan they get on their next new car. Now, the biggest, craziest tax proposal so far that we have heard is that Americans earning under $200,000 a year could perhaps pay no income tax. Now, this number has changed from $150,000 to $200,000. Whether that is looking at individuals or households, we don't know. These are just proposals, but it has been talked about very consistently. And this would be absolutely monstrous. The vast majority of US households make much less than $200,000 per year, which means for most US households, if something like this actually makes it through, it would mean your tax bill federally goes to a big fat zero. It is not quantifiable how much this would positively impact the everyday lives of almost all Americans, even those making over that amount, because the wealth effect of so many people receiving so much more money at the end of their paycheck and being able to spend that and invest that would produce an insane wealth engine, an insane growth, a spiral of prosperity. And because of how good and juicy this sounds to me, I'm almost certain that it won't happen, but we can wait optimistically. Now, at the beginning of the video, I did mention that there is a dark side or a bad side to all of these tax cuts. And while I am a huge proponent of tax cuts because let me keep more of my money, it belongs to me, especially if I don't agree with how you are spending it. There is a problem. And that problem is the fact that the US government receives 50% of its tax income from individual income taxes and 37% of its income from Social Security and Medicare taxes, which means that almost 90% of all taxes that the US government receives come from individual employees. And that total last year amounted to almost $5 trillion that it took from productive workers and productive businesses. $5 trillion. Yet even that is not enough, because every year the deficit widens. The deficit is the amount the US government borrows on top of what it takes in taxes, which means if this number goes down and the US government decreases the amount it takes in taxes, but this number continues to go up, which is the amount the government spends, then this number, the deficit, will continue to get worse and worse. Last year, the US government took $5 trillion in taxes, but they spent $7 trillion. That means they borrowed $2 trillion, added that to the debt, and now they have to pay interest on that as well as the rest of the national debt for basically eternity. So all of these tax cuts overall are actually kind of useless if they're not also paired with spending cuts, because it's not like that money is just free. It doesn't come from nowhere. They're taking that purchasing power one way or the other if the spending stays high. When they borrow that money gets lent into existence. That's inflation. And so either you are going to be paying the government's bills through seeing a dollar amount come out of your paycheck, or you're going to be paying the government's bills by watching the prices tick up higher at the grocery store. Either way, you are footing their bill. And so if this spending number doesn't drastically shrink to the point where this deficit comes close to zero, none of the tax cuts will mean anything. Now, obviously, for people like you and I who pay attention and we understand how these things work, we can prepare ourselves for this, and we can still benefit. When you invest in inflation-protected assets, then you get to benefit by the tax cuts because you have more dollars, and you then get to benefit from the inflation because you put those dollars into assets that will grow, that will protect you from that inflation. So some people like us are going to benefit from this, but it does come at the expense of everybody else who has no clue about how this stuff works and wonders why, even after tax cuts, they are still struggling to make ends meet. And so while I do really hope that we see some really fantastic tax cuts over the next couple of months get set into stone, I hope even more so that it will be paired with spending cuts. Otherwise, it's useless. If you'd like me to help you apply ideas like this to your investing so that you can prepare for this almost inevitable inflation that is coming and also profit from it, go ahead and click on the link in the description below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.